All right, so it's no secret that the Sony A7V is on its way. The Sony A7 IV has been out for a while now and it's ready. It needs an upgrade. And let's talk about it today, right now. Let's get into it. So to be honest, the Sony A7 IV I feel like is one of the best hybrid cameras next to its big brother, the Sony A7R5, and we'll talk about this in a second. Let's stay on topic. So the Sony A7 IV, I feel like, was such a huge jump from the Sony A7 III. From its menu systems to the dedicated switch that allows you to switch from photo to video, and just everything packed within this camera has been so great, except for a few little quirks, and that's what we're gonna talk about. So I feel like with the Sony A7 V, this is what they need to do. They need to put some features into that camera that I think will be taken from a couple other cameras on their line now. One thing that I'd love to see taken from the Sony A7R5 is the screen. When I bought this camera, I didn't think that I was gonna love this screen until I really started using it. I really never thought that I would love to shoot like this as much as I do, but being able to just flip that screen down and kind of almost have that like top-down view when you're shooting video, or sometimes even street photography, you can be a little more discreet. It's just such an amazing screen, and I really hope they bring that into the Sony A7 V. Another thing that I think that they really need to fix, and I think this is the key factor that is going to make the A7 V stand out and just be such a better camera than the A7 IV. See, if there's anything that we've learned from other camera companies, we're not gonna say any names, is when it takes 4, 5, 6 years to come out with a second edition of a camera, or a new edition, because this would be the 5th edition coming out. We want to see improvements. We want to see change. We want to see big jumps of change, not just little increments like other camera brands have done. So one of the big things I think that has crippled this camera is the fact that it has terrible rolling shutter, and it has a 4K 60 with a 1.2 crop. That's what we need to get rid of. Give us 4K with no crop, better readout speeds, faster readout speeds, so we don't have that terrible rolling shutter. And if you don't know what rolling shutter is when you're shooting at 60 frames a second, 4K, and you move your camera and you get this kind of like jello effect, right? So your lines are going like this, like all over the place. And to be honest, when I hear a lot of content creators, photographers, filmmakers talking about this, I was like, well, when are you really ever moving your camera like that? Like, that just sounds silly. And a lot of the tests, when you go and watch all these videos from all the other creators, they're over there doing this to their camera. But it's like, in reality, when are you ever really doing that? And I had this happen to me on a real estate shoot recently where I was actually switching from one room to the other room, and I was trying to create a transition. But the problem was the rolling shutter was so bad that when I would go from one room to the other, the entire door frame would just bend. And if you know anything about real estate photography or real estate video, you want to try to keep your lines as straight as possible, and it was impossible. So, yeah. One thing that I wouldn't even be mad at is if they don't increase the megapixels in this camera. I feel like 33 megapixels is a sweet spot. Maybe if they bring it up a couple points or something like that, because they're probably going to replace the sensor in this camera to be able to give us faster readout speeds and no crop, all that other stuff. So if they have to increase that resolution just by a little bit, I wouldn't be mad. Maybe a 40 megapixel sensor is better than a 33. It gives you a little more resolution. But if we want to be able to keep low light good in these cameras, we need to keep the megapixels relatively low. So we'll see what happens. Now, honestly, I feel like one thing that Sony cameras are missing, and this is taking it way back. See, I've been shooting with Sony since 2016. The first camera I ever purchased was an A6000. And back then we used to have this thing called the Play Memories app. And you were able to actually like download features into your camera, like double exposure, long exposure, time lapse. This was before the cameras had a built-in time lapse feature. So one thing I would love to see Sony bring back moving forward with all their cameras is a form of Play Memories. Redesign the app, redesign it to where it wasn't as clunky as it used to be, or just give us a couple of those features already built into the cameras, because I honestly think that if you put double exposure in your Sony cameras, because I feel like that's such a missed mark in these cameras, not having double exposure, and I would love to see it in cameras moving forward. So Sony, if you're listening, if you're watching this video, give us double exposure in our cameras, or maybe some sort of play memories or something like that would be awesome. I don't think you have to bring the old app back. Maybe just give us some features or something like that, or the ability to install these things in here would be great. I don't know, but yeah. So a quick little recap on the video. These are features that I would love to see in the A7V moving forward. That is double exposure, the A7R5 screen, 4K 60 with no crop, and faster readout speeds. This would be such an amazing upgrade to the A7 IV that would probably make me sell my A7 IV or just buy another A7 V. So side note, I filmed this entire video on the Sony ZV-E10, the first edition. This is a $500 camera, and I'm using the Tamron 17-28 as my main lens because it's the widest lens I own, and it's actually not wide enough because this is a crop sensor camera, and the camera is probably about 5 feet away from me. So yeah, can you guys tell that I filmed this with a camera like this, or did you think that I was using my Sony A7 IV? Can you really tell the difference between crop sensor and full frame? Let me know in the comments below, and yeah, see you in the next one. And let's